Emily Parker thought she knew what danger looked like. After 5 years behind the reception desk at Riverside Community Mental Health Clinic, she had seen it all. The manic episodes, the withdrawal tremors, the vacant stares of the deeply depressed. She prided herself on reading people, on knowing when someone needed extra kindness or professional intervention. But on that Tuesday morning in November, when the automatic doors slid open at 10:47 a.m., Emily realized she knew nothing at all. The young man who walked in would teach her that the most dangerous assumptions are the ones we make about people we think we already know.
Quick pause. Before we continue, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? If you're enjoying these stories, make sure to hit subscribe, because tomorrow's episode is absolutely mind-blowing.
The morning started like any other Tuesday at Riverside Community Mental Health Clinic. Emily arrived at 7:30, exactly 30 minutes before the doors officially opened, just as she had done every workday for the past 5 years. She liked the quiet of the empty lobby, the way the early morning light filtered through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the waiting room chairs. It gave her time to prepare, to center herself before the chaos of the day began. She unlocked the glass doors, disabled the alarm system, and made her way to her station, a curved reception desk that sat like an island in the middle of the lobby. The desk was designed to be welcoming rather than imposing, low enough that she could make eye contact with everyone who approached, wide enough to create a sense of openness. Emily had personalized her space over the years, a small succulent plant in a ceramic pot, a framed photo of her golden retriever, Bailey, and a coffee mug that read, "Be kind," in simple black letters. Emily booted up her computer and began reviewing the day's schedule. Dr. Sarah Chen, the clinic's senior psychologist, had a full roster, 9 appointments, back-to-back, with only a 30-minute lunch break. Dr. Chen was in her mid-40s, a woman who moved through the clinic with quiet competence, her gray-streaked hair always pulled into a neat bun, her eyes sharp and observant behind wire-rimmed glasses. She had been at Riverside for 15 years and had seen the clinic grow from a small practice to a community cornerstone. The other therapist on duty today was James Rodriguez, younger and more casual in his approach. He favored jeans and button-down shirts, kept his dark hair slightly too long, and had a laugh that could be heard through the walls. His schedule was lighter, 6 appointments with longer sessions. He specialized in adolescent care and had a gift for connecting with teenagers who had given up on adults. By 8 o'clock, the first patients began trickling in. Emily greeted each one by name, her memory for faces and details one of her greatest assets. Mrs. Henderson, who always arrived 20 minutes early for her weekly session with Dr. Chen, clutching her worn leather purse against her chest. Tom Blackwell, a veteran in his 60s dealing with PTSD, who never made eye contact but always mumbled a "thank you." And Rebecca Liu, a college student battling anxiety, who seemed to shrink into herself as she sat in the waiting room, earbuds firmly in place. Emily checked them in with practice efficiency, updating their files, confirming their insurance information, offering water or coffee. She had learned that her role was more than administrative. She was often the first face people saw when they were at their most vulnerable, and that first interaction could set the tone for their entire visit. Dr. Chen emerged from her office at 8:45, right on schedule. She approached the reception desk with a slight smile, her tablet tucked under her arm. "Good morning, Emily. How's Bailey doing?" Emily grinned. Dr. Chen always asked about Bailey, ever since Emily had brought him to the clinic's holiday party 2 years ago. "He's getting old and stubborn, but he's happy. Still thinks he's a lapdog, despite being 70 pounds. Dr. Chen chuckled softly. The best ones always do. She glanced at the waiting room. "Mrs. Henderson is here already, I see. Some things never change." She paused, her expression turning more serious. "Any concerns on the schedule today?" Emily pulled up the appointment list on her screen. "Mr. Blackwell seems more withdrawn than usual. And we have a new intake at 2, a referral from County Hospital after a suicide attempt." Dr. Chen nodded slowly, absorbing the information. "All right, keep an eye on Mr. Blackwell. If he seems particularly distressed, let me know before his session." This was the dance Emily and Dr. Chen had perfected over the years, a seamless exchange of observations and concerns. Dr. Chen trusted Emily's instincts, and Emily respected Dr. Chen's expertise. It made the clinic run smoothly, made patients feel cared for beyond their scheduled hour. The morning progressed in its usual rhythm. Patients came and went, some looking lighter as they left their sessions, others still carrying the weight of their struggles. Emily fielded phone calls, scheduled follow-up appointments, dealt with insurance companies, and kept the coffee maker running in the small break room. James Rodriguez breezed through the lobby around 10, his messenger bag slung over one shoulder, a travel mug of what smelled like very strong coffee in his hand. "Morning, Em. Dr. Chen already here?" "In her office with Mrs. Henderson." "Perfect. My first appointment canceled, so I actually have time to review my notes like a responsible therapist." He flashed a grin. "I'm not kidding. I'm going to scroll through my phone for 20 minutes. Emily shook her head with a smile. James had a way of lightening the atmosphere, of reminding everyone that it was okay to be human, to not take yourself too seriously even in a serious profession. By 10:30, the waiting room had 4 people. An older gentleman waiting for James, a young woman Emily didn't recognize, probably a walk-in, and 2 teenagers who sat as far apart as possible despite clearly being there together, their body language screaming sibling rivalry. Emily was updating a patient file when the automatic doors slid open. The young man who entered moved with an odd stiffness, his gait mechanical. He wore a heavy navy jacket despite the mild November weather, the kind with multiple pockets and a hood. His hands were buried deep in those pockets, his shoulders hunched forward. Dark hair fell across his forehead, partially obscuring his face. Emily's fingers paused over her keyboard. Something in her chest tightened, a feeling she couldn't quite name. She looked up, really looked at him, and her breath caught. She knew this face. Marcus Holloway, 20 years old, maybe 21 by now. He had been a patient at the clinic about a year and a half ago, referred by his high school counselor during his senior year. Emily remembered him because he'd been one of the quiet ones, the kind who folded into himself, who answered questions in monosyllables and looked at the floor more than at people. He had attended sessions with Dr. Chen for about 4 months before he stopped showing up. Emily had called to follow up, as she did with all patients who missed appointments, but the number had been disconnected. It happens sometimes. People moved, people's circumstances changed, people fell through the cracks. But now Marcus was here, standing in the middle of the lobby, and everything about him was wrong. His skin was pale, almost gray, slick with perspiration despite the cool morning weather. His eyes, when they finally lifted from the floor, were hollow and glassy, like someone looking at the world from underwater. His jaw was clenched so tightly that Emily could see the muscles jumping at his cheek.
The other people in the waiting room hadn't noticed yet. The older gentleman was absorbed in his phone. The young woman was filling out paperwork. The teenagers were engaged in a silent standoff, determinedly ignoring each other. Emily's heart began to pound. 5 years of experience had taught her to recognize crisis, and every alarm bell in her head was ringing. This was not a young man seeking help. This was something else entirely. Marcus hadn't moved from his position near the door. His hands remained buried in his jacket pockets, and Emily could see his fingers clenching and unclenching around something hidden from view. His breathing was rapid and shallow, his chest rising and falling in quick succession. Emily made a decision in that split second. She stood up slowly, carefully, her movements deliberate and non-threatening. She kept her voice calm and gentle, the same tone she used with patients in crisis. "Marcus?" His head snapped toward her, eyes widening slightly. Recognition flickered across his face, followed by something that looked almost like confusion. "Marcus Holloway, right? I remember you. It's been a while. How have you been?" The other people in the waiting room were starting to notice now, sensing the shift in atmosphere. The older gentleman looked up from his phone, the young woman's pen still on her paperwork. Marcus's mouth opened, but no sound came out. His eyes darted around the room, landing on each person before skittering away. His whole body was trembling now, fine tremors running through his limbs. Emily made a decision in that split second. She stood up slowly, carefully, her movements deliberate and non-threatening. She kept her voice calm and gentle, the same tone she used with patients in crisis. "Marcus?" His head snapped toward her, eyes widening slightly. Recognition flickered across his face, followed by something that looked
almost like confusion. "Marcus Holloway, right? I remember you. It's been a while. How have you been?" Marcus's right hand was slowly emerging from his pocket, and Emily could see the dull black metal of what she now knew with absolute certainty was a gun. But she also saw something else. Tears streaming down his face, his expression crumbling into something that looked less like rage and more like utter desperation. In that moment, Emily understood. She wasn't facing a monster. She was facing someone who had given up on being saved, and she had exactly seconds to prove him wrong.
Marcus's hand stopped moving. The gun was half visible now, still mostly concealed but unmistakably there. Emily heard a sharp intake of breath from behind her. The young woman had seen it too. "Nobody move," Emily said quietly, not turning around. Her eyes remained locked on Marcus. "Just stay calm. Everything is going to be okay." She had no idea if that was true, but she said it with such conviction that even she almost believed it. Marcus's face was a mask of pain and confusion. Tears continued to stream down his cheeks, but his expression was distant, disconnected from the physical act of crying. It was as if his body was weeping while his mind was somewhere else entirely. "You remember that?" His voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. "The drawing?" "Of course I remember," Emily said. "You were really talented. I remember thinking that you saw the world differently than other people, that you noticed details most of us miss. The way you shaded the water to make it look like it was moving, the individual leaves on the trees, it was beautiful." This was not a lie or a manipulation. Emily did remember the drawing, had genuinely been impressed by it. She had told Marcus as much at the time, and he had ducked his head, embarrassed but pleased. "That place doesn't exist anymore," Marcus said, his voice breaking. "They built condos there, cut down all the trees, filled in the river, and put in a parking lot." Emily's heart ached. She understood now, or thought she did. This wasn't just about mental illness or a moment of crisis. This was about loss, about a world that kept taking things away, about feeling powerless and invisible. "That must have been really hard," she said softly, "losing a place that meant something to you." Nobody cared. Marcus's grip on the gun tightened. "I tried to stop it. I went to town hall meetings. I started a petition online. 53 people signed it. 53 out of a town of 40,000. And the developers didn't even acknowledge it. They just kept building." Behind Emily, I could hear movement, the teenagers shifting in their seats, the older gentleman slowly standing up. She needed to keep Marcus focused on her, needed to keep him talking. "You remember that. Your grandfather spent time together, wasn't it?" Marcus's eyes widened slightly. "How did you know that?" "You told Dr. Chen during one of your sessions. She mentioned it to me once, how important your grandfather was to you. Is he still around?" The question was a gamble. Emily knew she was touching on something potentially painful, but she needed to find the thread that would connect Marcus to something real, something that mattered more than whatever darkness had brought him here today. "He died 2 years ago. Heart attack. I was supposed to meet him that day, but I was late. I was always late for everything. By the time I got to the hospital, he was gone." His face crumpled, and for a moment he looked exactly like the scared teenage boy Emily remembered. The gun wavered in his hand. "You think that's why he died?" Emily asked gently. "Because you were late?" "I know that's why he died." Marcus's voice rose, and Emily tensed, but she didn't step back. "If I had been there on time, if I had been with him, I could have called 911 sooner. I could have done something. But I was late because I was always too anxious to get anywhere on time, always second-guessing myself, always frozen by stupid, pointless fear." The waiting room was deadly silent. Emily could feel the fear radiating from the people behind her, could sense their bodies coiled and ready to run. But running would trigger a chase, would shatter whatever fragile connection she was building with Marcus. "Anxiety is not a choice, Marcus. You know that. We talked about it in your sessions. It's not a character flaw or a failure.
It's a condition like diabetes or asthma. You wouldn't blame yourself if you had diabetes and couldn't run fast enough to save someone. But this is different, Marcus cracked. It's in my head. It's part of me. I am broken, and because I'm broken, the one person who ever really loved me is dead. There it was, the core of it. Not rage, not violence for the sake of violence. Guilt. Unbearable, crushing guilt that had festered and grown until it had become something monstrous. Emily took a small step closer. Your grandfather wouldn't want this, Marcus. Whatever you're planning to do here today, he wouldn't want it. For the first time, Marcus looked directly at her with full awareness, and what Emily saw in his eyes made her blood run cold. There was a flatness there, a finality that spoke of decisions already made. You don't know what I'm planning, he said quietly. Then tell me. Talk to me. That's all I'm asking. Just talk to me. Marcus laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. Talk. That's what everyone always says. Talk to someone. Get help. You're not alone. But I did talk. I came here for months. I sat in that office and talked to Dr. Chen, and you know what happened? Nothing. I felt exactly the same. Pills made me numb, therapy made me cry, and at the end of it all, I was still broken, still alone, still hating myself every single day. Emily felt a flash of anger, not at Marcus, but at a system that had failed him, at a world that made people feel like their pain was their own fault, at the impossible expectations placed on treatment as if 4 months of therapy could undo years of trauma and grief. You're right, Emily said, and Marcus blinked, clearly not expecting that response. Therapy didn't fix you. Pills didn't fix you. And I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry that we couldn't give you what you needed. But Marcus, you're still here. You're still standing. That takes so much strength, even if you don't feel strong right now. I'm not here because I'm strong, Marcus said. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. I'm here because I'm a coward. Emily frowned. What do you mean? Marcus pulled the gun fully out of his pocket, and Emily heard a gasp from behind her. But he didn't point it at anyone. Instead, he held it loosely at his side, his finger nowhere near the trigger. I came here to ask Dr. Chen to help me one more time, he said, his words coming faster now, as if a dam had broken. I came here because I'm planning to kill myself, and I wanted someone to talk me out of it. But I knew she wouldn't have time for a walk-in, knew she'd tell me to call the crisis line or to go to the ER. So I brought this because I thought if I had it, if I was a threat, she'd have to talk to me. She'd have to pay attention. Emily's mind reeled. She had been preparing for an active shooter situation, for violence directed outward. But this was something different, something even more delicate. Marcus was suicidal, yes, but he was also using the threat of violence as a cry for help. It was manipulative and dangerous and also desperately human. So let me get Dr. Chen, Emily said carefully. You're right, she's with a patient right now, but I can interrupt her. Marcus, if you want to talk to her, we can make that happen. You don't need the gun for that. No, I can't talk to her. She saw me at my worst. She knows everything about me, all the pathetic broken parts. I can't face her again. I can't see that look in her eyes, that professional concern that's really just pity. Then talk to me, Emily said. I'm here. I'm listening. I'm not going anywhere. You're a receptionist, Marcus said, without malice, just stating a fact. No offense, but you're not trained for this. You can't help me. Maybe not, Emily admitted. But I'm a human being who is standing right in front of you, who remembers you, who sees you, and right now, that might be enough. Just as Emily thought she was making progress, just as Marcus's grip on the gun seemed to loosen, the door to Dr. Chen's office opened. The psychologist stepped out, drawn by the unusual silence in the waiting room. Her eyes took in the scene instantly. Marcus, the gun, Emily standing between him and the other patients. But instead of fear, Dr. Chen's face showed something Emily had never seen before. Recognition and guilt and a deep, terrible understanding. Marcus, you came back. I've been waiting for you.
Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time. So if you're enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Dr. Chen moved into the lobby with slow, deliberate steps, her hands visible and empty. She wore her typical work attire, gray slacks, a navy blouse, sensible flats. But there was nothing typical about her expression. The professional mask she usually wore had cracked, revealing something raw and human underneath. "Everyone else, please leave quietly," Dr. Chen said, her voice calm but commanding. "Exit through the front doors. Do not run. Move calmly and carefully." The older gentleman didn't need to be told twice. He grabbed his jacket and headed for the door, giving Marcus a wide berth. The young woman followed, her hands shaking as she gathered her paperwork. The two teenagers moved as one unit, hurrying toward the exit while trying not to draw attention to themselves. Emily started to step aside to let them pass, but Dr. Chen shook her head almost imperceptibly. "Emily stays," Dr. Chen said. "Marcus, is that all right with you? Emily stays?" Marcus looked between the two women, confusion clouding his features. He seemed surprised that anyone was asking his permission, that he had any say in what happened next. Finally, he nodded. The waiting room emptied. The automatic doors slid shut behind the last person, leaving just the three of them in the sudden quiet. Emily could hear the hum of the fluorescent lights, the distant sound of traffic outside, the ragged rhythm of Marcus's breathing. Dr. Chen took another step forward, and Emily noticed something she had never seen in 5 years of working together: tears in the psychologist's eyes. "I failed you," Dr. Chen said to Marcus. "I knew I was failing you, and I let you slip away anyway. I've carried that guilt for 18 months. Marcus stared at her, the gun hanging forgotten in his hand. "What?" "When you stopped coming to sessions, when your phone was disconnected, I didn't try hard enough to find you. I told myself that clients have autonomy, that I couldn't force you to continue treatment, that maybe you had found help elsewhere. But the truth is, I was overwhelmed. I had too many patients, too many crisis situations, and I triaged. I made a judgment call that you were stable enough to let go. And I was wrong." Emily's mind was spinning. This was not the Dr. Chen she knew, the composed, professional woman who maintained appropriate boundaries, who never revealed personal struggles or doubts to patients. This was someone else entirely, someone who had been carrying a burden that Emily hadn't even known existed. "I got your letter," Marcus said. 2 months ago, the one you sent to my old address. My mom forwarded it to me." Dr. Chen nodded slowly. "I've sent 3 letters over the past year. I wanted to reach out, to check on you, to let you know that my door was always open if you wanted to come back. But I wasn't sure if you'd get them, and I didn't know if it would help or make things worse. I thought it was just standard procedure, like something the clinic makes you do to avoid liability or whatever." "No," Dr. Chen's voice was firm. "I wrote those letters because I think about you, Marcus. I think about a lot of my former patients, wonder how they're doing, hope they're okay. But you stayed with me because I saw myself in you." The room seemed to hold its breath. Emily stood frozen, watching an interaction that felt simultaneously too intimate to witness and too important to look away from. "What do you mean?" Marcus asked. Dr. Chen moved to one of the waiting room chairs and sat down, a gesture that somehow made her seem more human, less authoritative. She folded her hands in her lap, and Emily saw that they were trembling slightly. "When I was 23 years old, I tried to kill myself," Dr. Chen said. The words fell into the room like stones into still water. "I was in graduate school, studying psychology because I thought I could understand my own mind better if I understood the science of the mind. But understanding didn't help. I was drowning in depression and anxiety, and I couldn't see any way out. So I took a bottle of pills and went to sleep hoping I wouldn't wake up." Emily felt her knees go weak. In 5 years of working together, Dr. Chen had never mentioned this, had never given any indication of her own struggles. "Obviously, I did wake up," Dr. Chen continued. "I spent a week in a psychiatric hospital, then months in intensive outpatient treatment. It took years before I felt stable, before I felt like myself again. And even now,
20 years later, I have to be careful. I have to monitor my own mental health, take my medication, go to therapy, maintain boundaries, because I know how quickly things can spiral. Marcus had lowered the gun completely now, holding it loosely at his side. His face was a mixture of disbelief and something that might have been hope. When I met you, Dr. Chen said, I saw myself at 20. The same anxiety, the same self-loathing, the same feeling of being broken beyond repair. And I wanted so badly to help you, to save you, in a way that no one could save me at that age. But I also knew I had to maintain professional boundaries, had to not project my own issues onto you. It was a difficult balance, and when you stopped coming, when I couldn't reach you, I wondered if I had leaned too far in one direction or the other. Why are you telling me this? Marcus' voice was barely audible. Because you need to know that you're not alone. Not in the abstract, theoretical way that therapists usually say it, but in the concrete, lived, experienced way. I have been exactly where you are, standing on the edge, holding the means of my own destruction, convinced that ending it was the only option. And I am here now, 23 years later, telling you that it gets better. Not perfect, not easy, but better. Marcus's face crumpled. I don't know if I can wait 23 years to feel like this. You don't have to wait that long, Dr. Chen said gently. Recovery isn't linear, and it doesn't take the same amount of time for everyone. But Marcus, you have to make the choice to try. You have to put down the gun, literally and metaphorically, and accept help. Real help, not just a few months of therapy and some pills. What if it doesn't work? Marcus whispered. What if I try and I still feel like this? Dr. Chen stood up and took a careful step toward him. Then you try something else. Different medication, different therapy approach, different support systems. There are so many options we didn't explore in our sessions because you weren't ready, because we didn't have enough time, because the system is broken and doesn't give people like you the intensive care you need. But those options exist, Marcus. They're there if you're willing to reach for them. Emily watched as Marcus's shoulders began to shake, as silent sobs racked his body. The gun slipped from his fingers and clattered to the floor, and neither Emily nor Dr. Chen moved to grab it. Instead, Dr. Chen took another step forward and, slowly, carefully, put her arms around the young man. Marcus collapsed into the embrace, crying in great, gasping breaths that seemed to come from somewhere deep in his soul. Dr. Chen held him, one hand on the back of his head, the other on his shoulder, and Emily saw tears streaming down the psychologist's face as well. I'm sorry, Marcus sobbed. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to scare anyone. I just didn't know what else to do. I know. And we're going to figure this out together, okay? We're going to get the help you need. Real help. I promise you that. Emily finally moved, crossing the lobby to the gun. She picked it up carefully, surprised by the weight of it, and her hands shook as she examined it. Something didn't look right. She turned it over, looked at the chamber, and her breath caught. It was a replica, an incredibly realistic replica, detailed and weighted to feel like the real thing, but not functional. There was no firing mechanism, no way to load ammunition. It was a prop, nothing more. She looked up at Marcus, still crying in Dr. Chen's arms, and understood. He never intended to hurt anyone. He couldn't have, even if he had wanted to. The gun was a symbol, a prop for a desperate performance designed to force someone to pay attention to his pain. Emily set the replica on her desk and pulled out her phone. She dialed 111, knowing that protocol demanded it, knowing that Marcus would likely be taken to a psychiatric facility for evaluation. But as she gave the dispatcher the necessary information, she also watched Dr. Chen guide Marcus to one of the chairs, sit beside him, and continue talking to him in low, soothing tones. This was far from over. Marcus had a long road ahead of him: hospitalization, intensive treatment, possibly legal consequences for bringing even a fake weapon into a medical facility with intent to threaten. But he was alive. He had asked for help in the only way he could think of, and someone had heard him. As the ambulance pulled away with Marcus inside, Emily finally allowed herself to breathe. But her relief was short-lived. Dr. Chin turned to her, face pale and drawn, and said something that made Emily's blood run cold. "There's something else you need to know. Something I should have told you a long time ago. About why I really started working here and what happened to the patient who came before Marcus." Emily thought she understood the story, but she was about to discover that everything, the entire foundation of what she believed about the clinic, about Dr. Chin, about her own role here, was built on a lie.
The police had come and gone. They had taken statements, examined the replica gun, and ultimately decided not to press charges given the circumstances and Marcus's clear mental health crisis. The ambulance had transported Marcus to County Psychiatric Hospital, with Dr. Chen promising to visit him the next day and coordinate his long-term care. Now, the clinic was empty except for Emily and Dr. Chen. The other patients had been called and asked to reschedule. James Rodriguez had been updated on the situation and told to take the rest of the day off. The waiting room felt cavernous in its silence, the chairs arranged in their neat rows like an audience waiting for a performance that would never come. Emily sat behind her reception desk, her hands wrapped around a mug of coffee that had long since gone cold. Her body felt heavy with exhaustion, her mind struggling to process everything that had happened. She kept replaying the moment when Marcus had pulled out the gun, kept seeing the tears on his face, kept hearing Dr. Chen's confession about her own suicide attempt. Dr. Chen emerged from her office carrying a worn cardboard box. She set it on the reception desk with a heavy thud, dust motes swirling in the afternoon light filtering through the windows. Emily looked at the box, then up at Dr. Chen's face. The psychologist looked older somehow, as if the morning's events had carved new lines into her features. "I owe you an explanation," Dr. Chen said. "Not just about what I told Marcus, but about something else. Something I've kept hidden for a very long time." Emily's stomach twisted. She wasn't sure she could handle any more revelations today, but Dr. Chen was already opening the box, pulling out files and folders that looked older than anything currently in the clinic system. 15 years ago, when I first came to Riverside, I was running from something, Dr. Chen began. She pulled out a photograph and handed it to Emily. It showed a younger Dr. Chen standing in front of a different building, a sign reading Hartford Community Mental Health Services visible in the background. I worked in Connecticut before this. I had been there for 7 years, had built a thriving practice, was considered one of the best clinicians in the area. Emily studied the photograph. The Dr. Chen in the image looked different, less gray in her hair, but also less peace in her eyes. There was a tension in her smile, a tightness in her shoulders. "I had a patient named David Moreno," Dr. Chen continued, pulling out another file. "He was 19, struggling with depression and anxiety after his father's death. He reminded me so much of myself at that age. Same dark thoughts, same hopelessness, same desperate need for someone to save him. And I thought I could be that person. I thought I could give him what I had needed when I was 19. She opened the file, and Emily saw a young man's face staring out from an intake photo. Dark hair, haunted eyes, a tentative smile that didn't reach his face. "I broke every boundary I had," Dr. Chen said, her voice hollow. "I gave him my personal cell phone number. I met with him outside of scheduled sessions. When he couldn't afford his copays, I saw him for free. I convinced myself it was necessary, that he needed that level of support to survive. But really, I was trying to heal my 19-year-old self through him." Emily felt cold dread settling into her bones. She didn't want to hear the rest of this story, could already sense where it was going. "One night, he called me at 2 a.m. He was standing on a bridge, said he was going to jump. I talked to him for 3 hours. I begged, I reasoned, I reminded him of everything he had to live for, and eventually he came down from the bridge. He promised me he would go straight to the emergency room.
Dr. Chen's hands were shaking as she pulled out a newspaper clipping from the file. The headline read, "Local teen dead in apparent suicide." He didn't go to the hospital. He went home, and he hung himself in his bedroom while his mother was sleeping down the hall. Emily's eyes filled with tears. She wanted to reach out to comfort Dr. Chen, but she was frozen in place. The investigation that followed was brutal. The hospital reviewed my case files, interviewed my other patients, examined my treatment protocols. They found all the boundary violations, all the ways I had made David dependent on me rather than teaching him to be resilient on his own. I wasn't formally sanctioned, but the message was clear. I was a liability, so I resigned before they could fire me. "That's why you came here," Emily said quietly. "You were starting over." Dr. Chen nodded. "I came to Riverside determined to do things right. Strict boundaries, professional distance, by the book, every single time. I swore I would never again let my own issues interfere with my patients' treatment. I would be the perfect clinician, the one who never got emotionally involved, who never saw their own trauma reflected in their patients' faces." She pulled out another photograph, this one showing Dr. Chen on her first day at Riverside, cutting a ribbon at the clinic's expansion ceremony. "For 15 years, I maintained that standard. I was good at my job, maybe even great at it. But I was cold. I knew that. Patients respected me but didn't warm to me. I was effective but not compassionate. And I told myself that was the right way, the safe way, the only way to avoid another David Moreno." Dr. Chen looked directly at Emily now, her eyes rimmed with red. "But then Marcus came into my care, and I saw David all over again. Same age, same pain, same desperate need, and I was terrified. I was so terrified that I would repeat my mistakes, that I went too far in the other direction. I kept him at arm's length. I didn't give him my personal number. I didn't extend sessions when he clearly needed more time. I stuck rigidly to protocol even when protocol wasn't working. And when he stopped showing up, I told myself it was respecting his autonomy. But really, I was just too afraid to fight for him the way I should have." Emily finally found her voice. "But you sent him letters. You didn't completely let him go." "Letters are safe," Dr. Chen said bitterly. "Letters are one-way communication. Letters let me feel like I was doing something without actually risking anything. They were the bare minimum, and I knew it." She closed the file on David Moreno and put it back in the box, handling it like something sacred and terrible at the same time. "This morning, when Marcus walked through those doors, when I saw him standing there with that gun, my first thought was, not again. I cannot survive losing another David. And that's when I realized that I had been trying so hard to avoid making the same mistake that I had made an entirely different one. I had been so afraid of getting too close that I had never gotten close enough." Emily stood up and walked around the desk. She put her hand on Dr. Chen's shoulder, a gesture that felt inadequate but necessary. "You saved him today," Emily said. "You told him what he needed to hear. You gave him something real." "We saved him," Dr. Chen corrected. "If you hadn't kept him calm, if you hadn't remembered those details about his drawing and his grandfather, he might never have stayed long enough for me to reach him. You did something I didn't have the courage to do. You saw him, not as a patient, not as a case file, but as a complete human being." Emily thought about that, about the 5 years she had spent at this desk greeting patients, learning their names, remembering small details about their lives. She had always seen it as administrative work, as customer service. She had never considered it as therapy in its own right. "There's something else you need to know," Dr. Chen said, pulling out one more file from the box. This one had Emily's name on it. Emily's breath caught. "What is that?" "When I hired you 5 years ago, I almost didn't," Dr. Chen admitted. "You had no experience in mental health settings. You had worked as a receptionist at a law office and before that at a veterinary clinic. On paper, you were the least qualified candidate. But when I interviewed you, I asked you why you wanted to work here. Do you remember what you said?" Emily thought back, trying to recall that conversation. She had been nervous, desperate for the job after being laid off from the law office. I said I wanted to work somewhere that helped people. That law felt like it was about winning and losing, but healthcare felt like it was about caring. You said more than that. Dr. Chen opened the file to reveal Emily's handwritten application. She read from it, "I want to work somewhere where people are seen at their most vulnerable, because I believe the most important thing we can do for each other is to witness each other's pain without judgment. I may not be able to heal anyone, but I can make sure no one feels invisible." Tears filled down Emily's cheeks. She didn't remember writing those words, but hearing them now, she recognized the truth in them. "That's why I hired you," Dr. Chen said, "because you understood something that took me decades to learn, that healing isn't just about treatment protocols and evidence-based interventions. It's also about being human with other humans. It's about seeing people." She closed the file and put it back in the box. "I've been thinking a lot lately about leaving Riverside, about retiring or maybe moving to teaching instead of clinical work. I'm tired, Emily. I've spent 15 years trying to be perfect, trying to make up for David Marino, and today I realized I can't do this anymore. Not this way." Emily felt panic rise in her chest. "But what about your patients? What about Marcus?" "That's what I need to talk to you about." Dr. Chen pulled out one more document from the box. This one had Emily's name on it. Emily's breath caught. "What is that?" "When I hired you 5 years ago, I almost didn't—"
You have something more important than education, Dr. Chen interrupted. You have instinct. You have compassion. You have the ability to connect with people in crisis. Those are things that can't really be taught. The rest, the theory, the techniques, the clinical knowledge, those you can learn. But I'm 32 years old. I'd be starting over completely. And the cost? The clinic has a continuing education fund, Dr. Chen said. It's been sitting mostly unused because none of our staff have wanted to pursue further degrees, but it's there. It could cover a significant portion of your tuition, and you could work part-time while going to school. James has been asking if we could hire another therapist to ease his caseload. You could shadow him, start learning. Emily looked at the brochure, her mind racing. She thought about Marcus, about how she had remembered his drawing, his grandfather, the small details that had helped her reach him. She thought about 5 years of greeting patients, learning their faces, noticing when someone was struggling more than usual. She thought about Mrs. Henderson, always early for her appointments, and Tom Blackwell, who never made eye contact, and Rebecca Liu shrinking into herself in the waiting room. She had seen them, really seen them, and maybe that did count for something. "I don't know if I'd be any good at it," Emily said quietly. "You're already good at it. You just don't have the credentials yet. But Emily, if you decide to do this, you need to understand something. It will be the hardest thing you've ever done. You'll hear stories that break your heart. You'll lose patience despite your best efforts. You'll make mistakes and second-guess yourself, and sometimes wonder if you're doing more harm than good. This job takes everything you have and then asks for more." "Then why do you do it?" Emily asked. Dr. Chen smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes for the first time that day. "Because every once in a while, you get a Marcus, someone who walks through those doors planning to give up, and you get the chance to show them there's another way. You get to be the person you needed when you were at your lowest. You get to witness transformation, even when it's slow and messy and imperfect. And that makes all the rest of it worthwhile." Emily picked up the brochure, running her fingers over the glossy paper. A master's degree would take 2 to 3 years. 2 to 3 years of classes and practicum hours and supervision. 2 to 3 years of learning theory and ethics and assessment techniques. It felt overwhelming and impossible and also somehow exactly right. "Can I think about it?" she asked. "Of course," Dr. Chen said. "Take all the time you need. The application deadline isn't until February. But Emily, whatever you decide, I want you to know something. You made a difference today. You always make a difference. Whether you're sitting behind that desk or sitting across from a patient in a therapy session, you have a gift. Don't let anyone, including yourself, convince you otherwise." 3 weeks later, Emily was sitting at her desk filling out the graduate school application when her phone buzzed.
It was a text from an unknown number. "This is Marcus. Dr. Chen gave me your number. I hope that's okay. I wanted to thank you for saving my life, but there's something I need to tell you, something Dr. Chen doesn't know. The day I came to the clinic wasn't the first time I tried, and it won't make sense until you understand what really happened to my grandfather. He didn't die of a heart attack. That's just what we told everyone." Emily's hands froze over her keyboard. She looked up at Dr. Chen's closed office door, where the psychologist was in session with a new patient. Whatever Marcus was about to tell her, it was going to change everything again.
Emily stared at her phone, her heart hammering. She should tell Dr. Chen. She should forward this message and let the professional handle it. But something stopped her. Marcus had reached out to her specifically, had trusted her with something he hadn't told his therapist. She texted back, "It's okay that you have my number. I'm glad you reached out. You don't have to tell me anything you're not ready to share." The response came almost immediately. "I need to tell someone. It's eating me alive. Can I call you?" Emily glanced at the clock. It was 2:30 p.m. on a Thursday. She had patients checking in for afternoon appointments, phones to answer, administrative tasks piling up. But she also had a young man on the other end of that phone who was reaching out, who needed to be heard. She texted, "Give me 5 minutes," and then walked quickly to James Rodriguez's office. He was between sessions, reviewing notes. "James, I need a favor. Can you cover the front desk for about 30 minutes? I have a call I need to take." James looked up, saw something in her expression, and nodded without asking questions. "Of course. Take your time." Emily grabbed her phone and jacket and stepped outside into the November afternoon. The sky was overcast, threatening rain, and a cold wind whipped through the parking lot. She walked to her car, got inside, and called Marcus. He answered on the first ring. "Thank you for calling," he said, his voice shaky, but clearer than it had been 3 weeks ago. "I know you're working. I know this is a lot." "It's okay," Emily assured him. "I want to hear what you have to say. Take your time." She heard him take a deep breath, then another. On the other end of the line, there were sounds of a television in the background, footsteps, a door closing. He must still be at the psychiatric hospital, probably in a common area or his room. "My grandfather didn't die of a heart attack. He killed himself. He jumped off the same bridge where I was planning to jump that night 2 years ago, the night I called Dr. Chen." Emily's blood went cold. "Oh, Marcus. We told everyone it was a heart attack because my grandmother couldn't handle the truth. She's old-fashioned, Catholic, believes suicide is a sin. My mom and I decided it was easier to lie. But the thing is, I knew he was struggling. I knew he was depressed after he lost his job. I knew he was drinking more, sleeping less, pulling away from everyone. And I didn't do anything." "You were 17 years old," Emily said gently. "You were a kid. That wasn't your responsibility." "But I understood what he was going through," Marcus insisted. "I was already dealing with my own depression and anxiety. I knew the signs, and I was too caught up in my own problems to help him with his. The day he died, he had asked me to meet him at our spot, the place by the river, the one I used to draw. He said he wanted to talk. And I was late because I was having a panic attack about a stupid presentation I had to give at school. By the time I got there, he was gone. The police found him at the bridge 3 hours later." Emily could hear the tears in Marcus's voice, the guilt that had been festering for years. "That's why I couldn't tell Dr. Chen the whole truth when I was seeing her. How could I tell her that my grandfather killed himself when everyone thought he died of a heart attack? How could I explain that I was late to meet him on purpose because I was scared of what he might tell me? That I already suspected he was saying goodbye and I couldn't face it?" "Listen to me carefully, Marcus," Emily said, her voice firm but compassionate. "Your grandfather's death was not your fault. Not because you were late, not because you missed the signs, not because you were dealing with your own struggles. He was an adult who made a choice, a terrible, final choice, but his choice. You were a child who needed his grandfather to be the strong one, not the other way around." "But if I had been there—" "You don't know what would have happened," Emily interrupted.
Maybe you could have talked him down that day. Maybe not. Maybe he would have tried again a week later or a month later. You can't know, Marcus, and you can't live your life in the maybe. You can only live in what is. And what is right now is that you're still here. You made a different choice than your grandfather made. You asked for help. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When Marcus spoke again, his voice was small. The reason I brought the gun, the fake gun, to the clinic that day wasn't really about getting Dr. Chen's attention. I mean, it was, but it was also about something else. I wanted to see if I was like him, if I had it in me to actually go through with it. And when I stood there in that lobby, I realized I didn't. I couldn't. Even with a fake gun, even with a plan, I couldn't stop myself from hoping someone would stop me. Emily felt tears running down her own cheeks. That's the difference, Marcus. That's the part of you that's stronger than the depression, stronger than the guilt, the part that wants to live even when it doesn't know how. Dr. Chen has been helping me see that, Marcus said. She visits me 3 times a week. She's coordinating my transfer to a residential treatment program next month. She told me about David, about what happened in Connecticut. She said I reminded her of him, but also of herself. She said she's been so afraid of losing another patient that she almost lost me by trying too hard not to care. Emily smiled through her tears. She told me the same thing. She's harder on herself than anyone I've ever met. Marcus said, "She said you're going to become a therapist, that you're applying to grad school." Emily looked down at her phone, surprised. "She told you that?" She said the clinic is going to be different in a few years, that she's working on making changes so that people like me don't fall through the cracks. She said you helped her remember why she got into this field in the first place, not to be perfect, but to be present. Emily wiped her eyes, looking out at the gray sky through her windshield. "I haven't decided for sure yet. It's a big commitment, and I'm not sure I'm ready." "I think you're ready," Marcus said quietly. "You saved my life without any training, just by remembering that I like to draw, just by seeing me as a person instead of a problem. That's what a good therapist does, right? They see you." They talked for another 15 minutes. Marcus told her about the psychiatric hospital, the group therapy sessions, the medication adjustments, the slow process of learning to live with his diagnosis rather than fighting against it. He told her that his mother had finally told his grandmother the truth about his grandfather's death, and surprisingly, his grandmother had cried and said she had always known, had always suspected, but had been too afraid to admit it. The whole family was in therapy now, starting to heal together. By the time Emily hung up, the threatened rain had started to fall, soft drops pattering against her windshield. She sat in her car for a few more minutes, watching the water blur her view of the clinic, thinking about everything that had happened in the past 3 weeks. She thought about Marcus, learning to carry his grief without letting it destroy him. She thought about Dr. Chen finally allowing herself to be human and imperfect after 15 years of rigid professionalism. She thought about David Marino, whose death had cast such a long shadow, and how that shadow was finally starting to lift. And she thought about herself, sitting at that reception desk for 5 years, believing her role was small and administrative, never understanding that every kind word, every remembered detail, every moment of genuine presence was its own form of healing. Emily pulled out her phone and opened her email. The graduate school application was saved as a draft, half finished, waiting for her to make a decision. She opened it and began typing, filling in the sections she had left blank, answering questions about her goals and motivations. In the personal statement section, she wrote, "I want to become a therapist because I have learned that the most important thing we can do for each other is witness each other's pain without judgment. I have spent 5 years working in a mental health clinic, and I've seen firsthand that healing happens not just in therapy sessions, but in every interaction where someone feels truly seen. I may not be able to fix everyone who walks through the door,
but I can make sure no one feels invisible. And sometimes that is enough to save a life.
6 months later, Emily walked through the front doors of Riverside Community Mental Health Clinic at 7:30 a.m., just as she had done every workday for the past 5.5 years. But everything was different now. For one thing, she wasn't alone. Walking beside her was Maria Santos, the new receptionist, a warm and capable woman in her 40s who had worked in healthcare administration for 15 years. Emily had spent the past month training her, teaching her the rhythms of the clinic, introducing her to the regular patients, showing her all the little things that made the reception desk more than just an administrative post. Emily was still working at the clinic, but her role had shifted. She was now a graduate student intern, taking classes 3 days a week and working at Riverside the other 2 days. She spent her time shadowing Dr. Chen and James Rodriguez, sitting in on therapy sessions, learning to take clinical notes, practicing the art of therapeutic listening. The clinic itself had changed too. Dr. Chen had fought for and won additional funding from the state, allowing them to hire 2 more therapists and extend their hours. They now offered evening appointments, making care more accessible to people who couldn't take time off work. They had implemented a same-day crisis appointment protocol, ensuring that people like Marcus wouldn't have to wait weeks to be seen when they were in acute distress. And Marcus was doing better. Not perfect, not cured, but better. He had completed his residential treatment program and was now living in a transitional housing facility, working part-time at an art supply store, continuing therapy twice a week, taking his medication consistently. He had even started attending a grief support group for people who had lost loved ones to suicide. He came to the clinic once a month for a check-in session with Dr. Chen, and Emily always made sure to greet him when he arrived, to ask about his art, to remind him of how far he had come. Emily hung up her jacket and made her way to what used to be a storage room and was now her office. It was small, barely large enough for a desk, 2 chairs, and a bookshelf, but it was hers. She had decorated it simply, the same succulent plant from her old desk, a new framed photo of Bailey, grayer now, moving a little slower, and a drawing that Marcus had given her 3 months ago. A landscape featuring trees and a river, beautiful and detailed, with a small figure standing at the water's edge, looking toward the horizon. There was a knock on her door frame. She looked up to see Dr. Chen standing there, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might need this," Dr. Chen said, handing one to Emily. "Big day today." Emily took the coffee gratefully. Today was indeed big. She was leading her first therapy session, supervised by Dr. Chen, but still her first time as the primary therapist. The patient was a young woman named Ashley, 19 years old, recently diagnosed with depression and anxiety after a suicide attempt. "Nervous?" Dr. Chen asked, settling into the chair across from Emily's desk. "Terrified. What if I say the wrong thing? What if I make her worse?" Dr. Chen smiled, the same smile she had given Emily 6 months ago when she encouraged her to apply to graduate school. "You won't. You be yourself, which is exactly what she needs. Trust your instincts, Emily. They have served you well so far." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, sipping their coffee, and Emily thought about how much had changed in such a short time. Dr. Chen was different now, warmer, more open, more willing to be vulnerable. She had started her own therapy again, processing her grief over David Moreno, examining the ways she let fear drive her clinical practice. She was becoming, in her own words, the therapist she had always wanted to be but had been too afraid to become. "I got a letter yesterday," Dr. Chen said, "from David Moreno's mother." Emily's breath caught. "After all these years?" Dr. Chen nodded. She said she had been following my career from a distance, had seen the article about the crisis intervention protocol we implemented here. She wanted me to know that she didn't blame me for David's death, had never blamed me. She said that I had been one of the few people who truly tried to help him, and she was grateful for the time I had given him. Tears welled in Dr. Chen's eyes. She also said that David had left a note, one she had never shown anyone because it was too painful, but she decided I should see it. He wrote that he was sorry for not being able to use the help I offered, that he knew I had tried, and that his death wasn't my fault.
Emily reached across the desk and squeezed Dr. Chen's hand. "That must have been difficult to read." "It was," Dr. Chen said, "but it was also freeing. I've carried the belief that I killed David through negligence, through getting too much or not enough. But reading his words, seeing that he understood he was making his own choice, it helped. It doesn't erase the grief, but it lifts some of the guilt." She took a sip of her coffee, collecting herself. "I tell you this because you're about to start this journey, Emily, and you need to understand that you will lose patience. Not everyone can be saved, no matter how skilled you are, how much you care, how available you make yourself. Some people will make the choice to end their pain in the most final way possible. And when that happens, you cannot let it destroy you." "How do you keep going?" Emily asked. "How do you walk into session after session, knowing that any one of these people might be the next David?" "Because for every David, there are 10 Marcuses. For every person we lose, there are so many more who find their way to recovery because someone, maybe you, maybe me, maybe a receptionist who remembered that they like to draw, gave them a reason to hold on for one more day." A soft chime from Emily's computer indicated that Ashley had checked in at the front desk. Emily's first real patient was waiting. Dr. Chen stood. "I'll be right outside if you need me, but you won't need me. You've got this." Emily took a deep breath, smoothed down her blouse, and walked out to the waiting room. Ashley sat in one of the chairs, her knee bouncing nervously, her hands clasped tightly together. She looked up when Emily approached, and Emily saw fear and hope warring in her eyes. "Ashley, hi, I'm Emily Parker. I'm glad you're here." Ashley stood, shoulders hunched, making herself small. "Thanks. I'm really nervous." "That's completely normal," Emily said with a warm smile. "First therapy sessions are always a little scary, but I promise we'll take it at whatever pace feels comfortable for you. This is your time, your space, and we're going to figure out how to use it in a way that actually helps." They walked together to Emily's small office. Ashley settled into the chair across from the desk, and Emily sat down, leaving her notebook closed for now, focusing entirely on the young woman in front of her. "So," Emily began, "I know a little bit about why you're here from your intake paperwork, but I'd like to hear it from you, in your own words. What brought you to this point? What made you decide to ask for help?" Ashley looked down at her hands, twisting them in her lap. "I tried to kill myself 3 months ago. Pills. My roommate found me and called 911. I spent a week in the psych hospital, and they referred me here for follow-up care." Her voice was flat, emotionless, reciting facts like reading from a script. Emily recognized this, the disconnection that came from having to tell your story too many times to too many professionals, from reducing your pain to clinical details. "That must have been really scary, both the attempt and the aftermath. How are you feeling now, right now, in this moment?" Ashley looked up, seemingly surprised by the question. "Right now? I don't know. Tired, mostly, numb. Like I'm going through the motions because everyone says I have to, but I don't really know what the point is." "The point of therapy?" Emily asked. "The point of anything. The point of getting up every day, going to class, pretending I'm fine when I'm not. What's the point when it all feels so heavy and meaningless?" Emily leaned forward slightly, maintaining eye contact. "I don't know if I can give you the answer to that. The point, the meaning, that's something you'll have to discover for yourself. But what I can do is walk with you while you're looking for it. I can be here, in this room, every week, and witness your struggle without judgment. I can help you carry some of the weight when it gets too heavy. And maybe, over time, we can work together to find small points, small meanings that make it worth getting up each day." Ashley's eyes filled with tears. "What if there aren't any? What if I look and there's just nothing?"
"Then we keep looking," Emily said simply. "Together. And in the meantime, we work on making the weight a little lighter. The days a little more bearable. You don't have to find all the answers today, Ashley. You just have to be here, which you already are. That's enough for right now." For the next 45 minutes, Emily listened as Ashley talked about her depression,
her anxiety, the crushing pressure of perfectionism, the feeling of being fundamentally broken. And Emily responded not with clinical jargon or rehearsed interventions, but with genuine presence. She asked questions. She reflected back what she heard. She validated Ashley's pain while also gently pointing out strengths and resilience that Ashley couldn't yet see in herself. When the session ended, Ashley stood to leave, and there was something different in her posture. A slight relaxation in her shoulders, a bit more color in her face. "Thank you," Ashley said at the door. "This was, I don't know, different than I expected. Better, maybe. I'm glad. Same time next week." Ashley nodded and left. Emily returned to her office and found Dr. Chen waiting outside. "How did it go?" Dr. Chen asked. Emily thought about it, replaying the session in her mind, analyzing what she had done well and where she had stumbled. "It went okay. I think I connected with her. I made her feel heard, but I also felt so inadequate, like I should have had more answers, more solutions." Dr. Chen smiled knowingly. "Welcome to therapy, Emily. That feeling never really goes away. You just learn to sit with it, to trust that being present is its own form of healing, even when it doesn't feel like enough." Over the following weeks and months, Emily continued to learn. She made mistakes, asked the wrong question at the wrong time, missed important cues, struggled to balance empathy with appropriate boundaries. But she also had victories, moments when a patient's face lit up with sudden understanding, sessions where someone cried for the first time in years and finally released grief they'd been carrying alone. Small breakthroughs that built over time into larger transformations. Ashley became one of her regular patients. Slowly, gradually, the young woman began to find her way forward. She started painting, discovered she had a talent for abstract art. She joined a campus mental health advocacy group, turning her pain into purpose by helping other students who struggled. She still had bad days, still fought with depression and anxiety, but she was fighting. She was trying. She was alive. Marcus stopped by the clinic one afternoon in early spring to show Emily his portfolio. He had applied to art school and been accepted with a scholarship. The portfolio was full of his landscape drawings, rivers and trees and bridges, but also people. Figures in the distance, small but present, looking toward horizons, standing at water's edges, moving forward. "These are incredible," Emily said, paging through the portfolio. "Marcus, you should be so proud." "I am," he said, and he smiled. A real smile, one that reached his eyes. "I never thought I'd make it here. A year ago, I was standing in this lobby with a fake gun, convinced I had no future. And now I'm going to art school. It's surreal." "It's not surreal," Emily corrected gently. "It's earned. You did the hard work of recovery. You showed up for yourself, even when it was painful. This is your reward for choosing to stay." Marcus looked around the lobby at the comfortable chairs and the coffee maker and the artwork on the walls. "This place saved my life. You and Dr. Chen, you saw me when I couldn't see myself. I don't know how to thank you for that. You just did. And Marcus, you'll pay it forward. You'll take what you learned here and use it to help someone else someday. That's how this works. We heal each other."
Up next, 2 more incredible stories are waiting for you right on your screen. If you enjoyed this one, you won't want to miss these. Just click to watch and don't forget to subscribe.